Funding for this edition of Remember Them with Steve Adubato and Jacqui Tricarico has been provided by the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, New Jersey's Clean Energy Program, lighting the way to a clean energy future, the Turrell Fund, a foundation serving children, Newark Board of Education, Johnson & Johnson, United Airlines, Atlantic Health System, making healthy easier. And by Rowan University, proudly serving New Jersey for 100 years. Promotional support provided by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. And by bestofnj.com, all New Jersey in one place.
Welcome to Remember Them. I'm Steve Adubato with my colleague Jacqui Tricarico. Jacqui, in this episode, we're going to remember three very prominent public officials in the state of New Jersey. Congressman Bill Pascrell. We talked to Brendan Gill, who is an Essex County Commissioner who worked for Congressman Pascrell, who was a member of Congress for many, many years. Very important person. On the second half, we talk about United States Senator Frank Lautenberg and Justice James Coleman, who was the first African-American to serve on the state Supreme Court. So we honor, recognize, and remember three very important public figures in this state. Your turn, Jacqui. What'd you pick up in that?
Yes, Steve, and on the back end, you get to talk with Rick Thigpen from PSEG Foundation about Senator Lautenberg, and I know you have a personal connection to him. You touched upon this story a little bit in your conversation with Rick, but I thought it'd be interesting to learn more about your direct connection to him as well.
It's not very complicated. As a very young man in the mid-'80s, I wanted to run for the state legislature. I was only out of graduate school for a couple of years, had literally no chance to win in this legislative seat, which was held by someone in the other party for years. And I went to Frank Lautenberg, who was a newly minted United States Senator who happened to live in Montclair in his beautiful home. And I thought, if I can ever get Senator Lautenberg to hold a fundraiser for me, we could raise a few dollars and get some credibility. I was shocked when he said yes. And that was the first fundraiser that was held when I ran for the state legislature. And it was, Frank Lautenberg was a big part of my life. And it's not just me, because Rick Thigpen talks about how he was a mentor to him. He helped an awful lot of people, and he made such a difference in the United States Senate. And also the other conversation with Rick about a former Superior Court Justice, Coleman, who was also a member of the Supreme Court. I mean, the first African-American in so many ways. Rick talks about the importance of Justice Coleman and the impact that he had on the state. It's important stuff, Jacqui.
Three really inspirational stories, three important figures in New Jersey history that we need to remember because of the really important things that they did here in our state.
Let's get to it. Let's remember three very important public officials in the state of New Jersey and the nation. We're talking leadership with a guy who knows a little bit about it. He's been a mayor, he's been a member of the legislature in New Jersey, and now United States Congressman for just a few years. United States Congressman Bill Pascrell. Most important leadership lesson you've learned so far is?
Make friends before you need them.
What does that mean?
It means that don't begin to make friends when you get into a jam or a crisis or a difficult problem, because you'll find it more difficult. You make friends before, you reach out, be sincere about that. And then when you need these people, they'll at least listen to you if they're your real friends.
Is that especially true in Congress?
Absolutely true.
We remember the Honorable Congressman Bill Pascrell with someone who knew him very well. Brendan W. Gill is a commissioner in Essex County and worked with and for the congressman. Good to see you, Brendan.
Good to see you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
It's our honor to remember and recognize Congressman Pascrell. What made him so special?
I think the first thing that made him so special, Steve, was his ability to connect with people. It's a very generic phrase, but more so than anyone that I've ever worked with in public life, and I've had the honor to work with quite a few elected officials, he had just an uncanny ability to make people that he dealt with feel like they were being heard, to relate to them, not because of the title that he held. He held many titles in his career. He was a mayor, a state assembly person, a longtime member of our congressional delegation. But he just had this amazing ability when he spoke to someone, when he was in a setting that of retail politics, to really make you feel that what you cared about, what you were talking about at that time, and it was sincere when I say this, it's just who he was. He loved to be around people that you were being heard. And I think a lot of that came from his, his own personal life experience. It's been talked a lot about. I mean, he, born and raised in the city of Paterson, made his home there throughout his entire career, was probably one of the few members of Congress when he served that when he went home to his district, was returning both to the place of his birth, but also to an inner city, place that looked a lot different than many of the other districts that that his colleagues in the House represented.
The kinds of issues that the congressman cared deeply about impacted people that were economically disadvantaged, disproportionately in urban communities. Where do you think that passion for leading those fights in Congress, in the state legislature, and as mayor in Paterson came from?
I think, his story, his love for Paterson is well known. I mean, he loved that city, one of the most diverse cities here in our state. And I think that's what formed, excuse me, that passion, to represent, the place that he came from, the place of his birth, where his family was from, a city with a long history of being an entry point to various, even to this day, right? It's the most diverse city actually in the state of New Jersey, home to over 120 plus different ethnic and racial groups, still an entry point for large immigrant communities that come into our state. And that's what he was about. He was, he had a lot of great sayings and phrases, and I worked for him, like, he was my first person. I had no experience in politics when he hired.
Yeah, Brent, talk about that. When you walked into it, what year was it that you walked into his office?
1996. I'm a fresh college graduate trying to make my way and find a place in public service. Knew that I had a passion also to serve, and really was trying to get a job actually on Capitol Hill, and was just kind of knocking on doors and doing everything I could to try to find an opportunity. And someone recommended to me that I call his office. So he was the mayor of Paterson at the time. I cold called his office, and he made an appointment to see me. I have no idea why.
You're 21 years old. You're a kid.
21 years old, kid. Again, no experience at all. No one in my family involved in that way. He made an appointment to see me. I went to go see him, for this appointment, kind of with I called it like my binder full of all my ideas. If I were going to solve all the world's, problems, and I was going to tell him, this is the way it should be. And he listened, and and again did the same thing. Made me feel heard. Made me feel that this was a substantive conversation. But then he also said, Steve, listen, I think that's great, but here's what I'd like you to do. We have some organizers that are registering people to vote down at a food town on Chamberlain Avenue this weekend. And you want to show up there 8:30 Saturday morning to participate in that activity, and meet some of these other people, and then come back and let's talk. And what I didn't realize at the time, I kind of walked out a little bit, okay, I'm going to go do some voter registration. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I didn't realize at the time was what he was really doing was kind of showing me that, like, listen, you want to do these things here, this is great, but like this also starts on the ground. This starts like, what is your ability to be in the community that you want to serve? What is your he was kind of giving me a test too to see, like, what was I willing to do? What kind of work was I put in order to do this other work?
How did that change your view? Because again, to be clear, Commissioner Gill is not from Paterson. He is you're from Montclair, New Jersey.
That's right.
So it may be a town over, but let's just say the communities are quite different in a lot of ways. How did that impact you, not just as a person, but ultimately as someone who chose a public life?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Steve, because it really only a few towns over, but very, very different experiences. Montclair is a diverse community, but it's not a Paterson, New Jersey in terms of all those varying groups. I had not even spent a lot of time in Paterson, quite frankly. So even though that, unfortunately in New Jersey, this exists a lot. The geographic boundary is very small, but the boundary of the worlds and the worlds that we're living is very, very large. So although it's only a 3 or 4 mile drive from Market Street to Paterson to Montclair, that's a long, long 4 miles in terms of what that actually means in your life experience. So for me, it exposed me, right, to what was going on kind of right in my own backyard.
Right.
And at the same time, made me realize that, hey, I don't have to work in Washington, D.C. or on Capitol Hill to maybe make the difference that I was hoping to make to improve the quality of life for the community that I lived in.
But let me ask you this. If Bill Pascrell, if Congressman Pascrell were alive, he was one of the first and one of the most consistent critics of Donald Trump, President Trump. What do you think, Congressman Pascrell, if he were alive today, why are you laughing?
Because he was a fighter. I can only imagine what.
Okay, what do you think? While there are a whole bunch of Democrats who can't figure out what they want to say and where they want to be,
yeah,
where do you think he would be?
I think he would be a fierce, fierce critic, first and foremost. I think that he would have immediately confronted the president on a series of decisions that have happened in the first few weeks of this administration. And he would have done it, I believe, in the type of language and plain language that people could relate to. So it's not, he would not be making esoteric arguments. And this is not being critical of any of the messaging that's coming out of the Democratic Party right now. I want to be clear on that. But I think, he had an amazing and uncanny ability to say, listen, if we were standing up to Donald Trump because we were saying that Donald Trump is a existential threat to our democracy, he would make you understand what that actually meant, in real terms. Like, what does that mean for you in your day-to-day life? He would be all over Donald Trump right now in a way that only Bill could do. But again, he would also had to do it where he had a lot, the congressman had a lot of support, even from constituencies that I see now that do support President Trump.
That's right.
So he also would have the ability to be able to walk into other rooms, and he'd love to be able to do that. That's the other thing. He did not shy away from a debate, the fight, bringing those issues to wherever.
He enjoyed it, didn't he, Brendan?
He loved it. No, he loved it. I mean, sometimes I felt like if he wasn't, mixing it up with somebody, he wasn't truly happy, right? So he, so the fact that there was a fight to be had, I think, always kept him going. And just one final point on that, Steve, is also I think the reason people related to him, to go back to your very first question, is that I think he would be in these places whether he held these titles or not. He always said,
right.
Titles come and go. You got to earn your spurs. There's no Republican or Democrat way to clean the street, meaning that he was a member of his city, of his community first and foremost. So whether he was a congressman or not, you probably see him at the same place grabbing a bite to eat, the same bar having maybe having a drink with a friend at another event. He'd be at all those things whether he was in politics or not. And I think people recognize that because it was true, and that's what just made him a memorable person.
Well said, Brendan. Hey, Brendan, thank you for helping us remember the honorable congressman, mayor, state legislator, and someone who loved Paterson, loved New Jersey, and loved this country deeply, Bill Pascrell. Thank you, Brendan. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve.
You got it. This is Remember Them, also on One-on-One. We remember some awfully special people right after this. We remember United States Senator Frank Lautenberg and Justice Coleman right after this.
To see more Remember Them programs, visit us online at rememberthemnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato, PhD, and at facebook.com/Jacqui Tricarico. And follow us on X at Steve Adubato.
No and rolls. Let me break it down quick. For students in transition, it's the perfect pick. Parents get to choose the right school for their kid based on needs consideration, no matter where you live. So visit the school, see what they're all about. Explore the campus, remove any doubt. Narrow down your choices to the top 8 and submit your app now, cause there's no need to wait. Bars. Head to norcanrolls.org and get started today.
New Jersey is leading the nation in clean energy investments with one thing in mind: you. Our clean energy program offers more ways than ever to help you save energy and money throughout your home. Visit njcleanenergy.com for rebates and home efficiency tips that can help you start saving right away. And discover how our investments in your local community mean a more sustainable New Jersey today and a brighter energy future for us all. Learn more at njcleanenergy.com. A message from New Jersey Board of Public Utilities.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jones, and I'm encouraging all women 40 and over to schedule their mammograms. Mammograms detect breast cancer early when it's easiest to treat. As a woman of color, I know the incidence of breast cancer, including the most aggressive type, triple negative, is higher for us, and we're often diagnosed later when treatment is more difficult. So it's important to start annual screenings at age 40. Please don't skip your mammogram. Schedule yours today and ask all the women in your life to schedule theirs.
We're now joined by our good friend Rick Thigpen, who is Senior Vice President of Corporate Citizenship at Pseg Foundation, one of our longtime underwriters. And Rick, I'll just say this, I've said it before, there would not be a Remember Them if it were not for Rick Thigpen's inspiration and coaching and saying, hey, and by the way, he's also a trustee of the NJPBS Public Television New Jersey. Rick said, we need to remember and recognize people who have made a difference who may not longer be with us on this earth. And let's talk about one of those folks. United States Senator Frank Lautenberg should be remembered because, Rick?
Well, Frank, so I'm sorry, Steve, I want to add, not just remember them, but also remember them because they come from so many different backgrounds, that excellence comes from so many different places. So Senator Frank Lautenberg, I have a personal experience with him, which I want to share, but Frank Lautenberg turned out to be the longest serving senator in the history of our great state, the last World War II veteran to serve in the United States Senate. And for Rick Thigpen, a regular guy who looked out for me, who I met when I was much younger, when he was first running for office, who made a difference in my life. And I'm eternally grateful for what Frank Lautenberg did for me.
You know, it's interesting. I don't think I said this before, but back in the mid-'80s when I was a kid running for the legislature, the first fundraiser that was had at Frank Lautenberg's home in Montclair. And I had no chance to win, but he was there. He was supportive of a lot of folks. As a United States Senator, he fought on certain issues. Why was he so caught up with raising the drinking age to 21, also smoking on commercial flights, like no more of that, and drunk driving issues? Why was he so concerned about safety, people's safety and health?
So, Steve, I want to be careful not to be the expert on all of Frank Lautenberg's life, but I do know, for instance, on smoking on airplanes, he worked very closely with the then Assembly Democratic leader, Willie Brown, on legislation to make
That's right. The great Willie Brown from Newark.
Yes. And Frank was a great proponent of safety and wanting to make sure. It's hard to imagine today that people used to smoke on airplanes, and that Frank Lautenberg is the reason that that is no longer possible. A really helpful public safety measure. But if I may, I want to take you back to the very beginning of Frank Lautenberg's political career. When he arrived on the scene, he was the early prototype of a self-funded campaign, a wealthy businessman from a company named ADP, a Patterson native who had never been in politics before. And as it turned out, Frank was well known as a philanthropist, primarily in the Jewish community, but he'd made quite a name for himself on giving to charitable causes, to using his success to help other people. I worked for another candidate during that 1982 campaign. If you remember, that was the campaign to fill the seat by Senator Harrison Williams, who got caught up in a scam and had to leave. Tom Kaine put Nicholas Brady in that Senate seat. And it was an open seat because Nicholas Brady didn't run, and Frank Lautenberg ultimately ran against Millicent Fenwick in the general election. I worked for one of his other opponents named Howard Rosen. And so I met Frank working for his opponent as my first job out of college, as an advance man for Howard Rosen. And I developed a friendship with him. Frank was known for being a very poor public speaker at the beginning, very hesitant. No one could have ever predicted he would serve so long in the United States Senate, but a man from the very beginning who made a name for himself with philanthropy, with caring for other people. And Frank Lautenberg was and Howard Rosen, the candidate I worked for, were a real introduction to me into New Jersey's Jewish community. Frank himself is a child of Polish and Russian immigrants who arrived in this country before World War I or around the time of World War I. But working for Howard Rosen and meeting Frank Lautenberg, I met many people from the Jewish community, and it was a lesson in geography and a lesson in history about some of the many of the harrowing stories of escape that people told to come from places like Georgia and Kazakhstan, places that not a lot of people know, but it took incredible courage to escape. So I met Frank Lautenberg as a caring and decent man who made a name being charitable. And I said the magic words to Frank Lautenberg one day that really changed my life and made him a solid friend of mine. I wanted to attend Columbia Law School, and Frank Lautenberg was one of the people who helped me achieve that goal one day. So I'm eternally grateful for Frank. I'm just one little example. Frank cared about people, and that's why he cared about safety. He took the time to help a young man who he did not need to help, and he made a huge difference in my life. It's changed everything for me. And that's the Frank Lautenberg that I've always known. I enjoyed him as a public servant. He was never a great public speaker, but he got better. But he was always a kind man, and he made a difference in New Jersey politics. And remember, he came back to save the day for the Democratic Party.
He served twice. He served, left, and came back.
He retired and regretted it. Bob Torricelli was running for re-election, had significant troubles, and had to withdraw from the race. And Frank Lautenberg arrived to save the day in the race. And I think he served 2 more terms. So together, he is now the longest serving senator New Jersey's ever had. But a man who cared.
He cared deeply. Let's do this. There's so much more to talk about with Senator Lautenberg. By the way, research Senator Lautenberg to find out more about his legislative accomplishments, his accomplishments in Congress made a difference. Can we switch to Justice on the New Jersey Supreme Court, James H. Coleman, Jr.? Who was whom, and why does he matter so much in this state and nation's history? Please.
So another great New Jerseyan who comes from a very different background than Frank Lautenberg. He was the son of a sharecropper, the grandson of a slave, who, like the Lautenberg family, sought to escape oppression. In this case, it was the Jim Crow laws of Virginia, and came to New Jersey in search of a brighter future. He's a Howard University Law School grad. He rose to become the first African-American workers' compensation judge in New Jersey, appointed by Governor Cahill, Republican from Camden County, to the court, elevated to the appellate court, and became the first African-American appellate court judge who became presiding judge by Chief Justice Robert Willens, a Democrat, if I'm not mistaken, from Middlesex County.
That's right.
Then the first African-American appointed to the New Jersey State Supreme Court by Governor Whitman, a Republican from Somerset County. She also appointed the former Essex County prosecutor, Herb Tate, to be the first and only African-American to serve on the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities, and made him president. So we should also tip our hats to Governor Whitman for making a difference in the state of New Jersey in a positive way.
That's right.
Justice James Coleman, who was humble, was of awesome intelligence, made such a huge difference in the state, spoke the words of justice and equity, words that are under assault today, was famous for writing over 2,000 opinions, about 400 published. One of his most famous opinions was often cited was about the standards that a judge should consider for summary judgment motions. And he was a force in the state Supreme Court and a force in the law in New Jersey. Chief Justice Willens is already known for being one of the most progressive judges. And Justice Coleman is just a little piece of that history of a court that made a difference in the lives of New Jerseyans. When he passed, I believe it was 2024, he was honored and revered by many. He was someone I had a chance to know as a younger man. He knew my father well. He was a humble man with incredible intellect. His work ethic was well known as being punishing for those around him. And it's just another reminder that people can come from very humble and very challenging backgrounds, no matter where they are in the world, and come and make a difference to us all. And we should never forget that excellence comes from so many different types of people. Justice Coleman and Frank Lautenberg are two excellent examples of that in the history of our great state of New Jersey. And he's also a published author, by the way.
Absolutely. People, again, should research Justice James Coleman. Real quick on this. The role of the judiciary in these critical times in our nation where there's some confusion about separation of powers. Loaded question, I know. What do you think Justice James H. Coleman Jr. would say and do?
Well, he was very much about the rule of law and that our Constitution was an important document that must be observed and respected, that the state constitution was similarly important and must be respected. I think if we follow the rule of law, if we abide by those rights given to us all by our Constitution, we are already on a much better path than on the path of if you have the power, you can do it. And if nobody has the power to stop you, you can do it. That is not the standard of success for us going forward, I think. The standard is following our Constitution and working together to bring it to life and to make life better for all of us. And he was certainly a proponent of those words that are now under assault of equity and justice. And for that, he should always be remembered, from his humble beginnings to a man who stood not just to make money for himself, but to make life better for other people. That's true for him, and it was true for Frank Lautenberg, as he started this conversation with. And we should be proud of both of them and proud of their backgrounds.
Rick, thank you for sharing those thoughts about Justice James H. Coleman Jr. and United States Senator Frank R. Lautenberg Jr. As always, Rick, we learn from your insight, wisdom, and the fact that you love history of this state and nation. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Steve.
On behalf of Jacqui Tricarico, the team at Remember Them in One-on-One, thank you so much as we remember Senator Lautenberg and Justice James Coleman. See you next time.
Remember Them with Steve Adubato and Jacqui Tricarico is a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, New Jersey's Clean Energy Program, the Turrell Fund, a foundation serving children, Newark Board of Education, Johnson & Johnson, United Airlines, Atlantic Health System, and by Rowan University. Promotional support provided by the New Jersey Business and Industry Association and by bestofnj.com. To see more Remember Them programs, visit us online at rememberthemnj.org. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Steve Adubato PhD and at facebook.com/Jacqui Tricarico. And follow us on X at Steve Adubato.
Nork and rolls. Let me break it down quick. For students in transition, it's the perfect pick. Parents get to choose the right school for their kid based on needs consideration, no matter where you live. So visit the school, see what they're all about. Explore the campus, remove any doubt. Narrow down your choices to the top 8 and submit your app now, cause there's no need to wait. Bars. Head to norkandrolls.org and get started today.
New Jersey is leading the nation in clean energy investments with one thing in mind: you. Our clean energy program offers more ways than ever to help you save energy and money throughout your home. Visit njcleanenergy.com for rebates and home efficiency tips that can help you start saving right away. And discover how our investments in your local community mean a more sustainable New Jersey today and a brighter energy future for us all. Learn more at njcleanenergy.com. A message from New Jersey Board of Public Utilities.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jones, and I'm encouraging all women 40 and over to schedule their mammograms. Mammograms detect breast cancer early when it's easiest to treat. As a woman of color, I know the incidence of breast cancer, including the most aggressive type, triple negative, is higher for us, and we're often diagnosed later when treatment is more difficult. So it's important to start annual screenings at age 40. Please don't skip your mammogram. Schedule yours today and ask all the women in your life to schedule theirs.
This is the story of every flight to every place you'll ever have to take ever. There's the one you'll take across an ocean or back home to the kids' table. All the flights to all the places when all your friends get married in the same year. The work one, the fancy work one, the flights you'll take with them, and the ones you'll take without them, and all the flights in between. Because when we built the world's biggest airline, we built it around you.